29th of September. After the events of the 24th, I spoke with the others again. I shared the video I had made, and they all admitted that they couldn't find rest either. We discussed what we would do now, but no one wanted to consider or expect me to go further into the forest. One of them had looked further into the symbols on the stone I found, but the specific references to known characters were beyond old. The following days we talked regularly about how we could possibly find restful sleep, but it never led to anything. It increasingly dawned on me that we, or rather I, would need to find out what was hiding in that forest. So finally, a few days later, on the 29th, I sent my last message. I simply told them, I'm going in, and I'm not coming out until I find the source. I'm afraid. In case anything happens, you know where I went. Wish me luck. After telling them this early in the morning, I made my way back to the forest one last time. The weather was at its worst that day. The rain now mirrored the storm from my last dreams. The smell of wet earth hung in the air, and the noise of the rain pelted down on every roof. I crossed the barrier of the tree line separating the forest from the street, and immediately felt myself being watched. I drove through the mud and tumultuous downpour until I left the familiar part of the woods and the sight of the engraved stone entered my vision. I paid it no mind. I was too busy driving as quickly as I could, as I constantly heard noise just behind me. Rustling bushes, the distant cries of animals, and the ever-present rush of wind. I tried to convince myself that the shadows I was seeing were only being cast by the storm clouds. Following the curving path as I had done so many times before, I soon reached the great pond stretching along the path, and for the first time, I kept going. Into the unknown. I put the lake behind me, and soon the thicket grew dense around me. The path narrowed and the rain pounded louder onto the earth. I soon needed to slow down, just to keep up with the many bends distorting the path. And again, I noticed something. This time, it felt less like familiarity, and more like a memory. With every 100 yards I covered, it felt more and more like I had been here before, as if I had already tread this path. As I remembered, I stepped off my bike because I knew the path wouldn't go much further, just as it had in my dreams. It was the same path, and I knew what I would find at its end. I counted my steps. 200, 199, 198. I was closer than ever before. I could still hear the sounds of hasty movement in the thicket. They seemed to come from everywhere around me. 106, 105, 104. The noise receded, either to retreat into the forest or because they had now overtaken me. Maybe I'd been expected. 23, 22, 21. I could see it. A few yards ahead. The path grew narrow, and the trees closed in. What remained was a dead end. The end of the road. 3, 2, 1. I now stood where I stood in my dreams. I looked around. Whether of curiosity or because the motion was memorized exactly, I do not know. What I saw was startling, but no surprise. To my left, maybe 20 yards off the path, stood a small building. A cube of brick with a slanted roof that channeled the rain. I saw the same strange paintings, which now reminded me of the engraved stone. It was the same building, the same one I saw in my dreams. Only then did I notice my beating heart, but whether this was because my dreams had suddenly become a reality, or a different, older fear, I couldn't tell. But there was a difference to my dreams. I was here. In every dream I would have woken up in this moment, but now I was really here, and it came to me to decide what would happen. I could hear something. It wasn't a noise or a voice inside my head, but I knew for certain that something was calling for me, drawing me near. It was old and hungry. It was actually with me. It had slipped past me. I had heard it, and now it was waiting for me. There, in its home. It offered me something. The truth. Answers to my questions. At least that's what I thought. And I only had to come to it. But I did not. I don't know if it was just fear, or I really did resist, but I managed to refuse its offer. I could be content with finding no contentment. That's what it wanted. It wanted me to give in to curiosity. With all willpower my tired body could muster, I took a single step back, and it knew I wanted to flee. I heard a tremendous rumble from inside the building. It carried a heavy echo, as if there was an unfathomably deep shaft inside. I was about to run, but a final idea came to my mind. Maybe I could at least bring something with me. So I reached into my pocket and quickly drew my phone, with which I quickly took a photo of the dream building. When a kind of door began to open on it, a red light shining from inside, I immediately turned and ran with all my remaining strength. Everything after that gets blurry. I remember my panting breath, many heavy footfalls through the mud and wet earth, and something that was above me or behind me, making sounds of rushing wind and casting everything in shadow. 198, 199, 200. I had reached my bike again and threw myself on top faster than I would have expected. After that came only frantic driving. I still held my phone and never got the chance to pocket it, leading me to take many blurry photos of the woods and the ground in my hurry. Suddenly, as I passed the lake again, I sensed the shadow descending above me, lowering onto the water beside me. I had not the time nor the strength of mind to look at it, but as I left the pond behind me, I felt it grow distant, and by the time I had passed even the strangely carved rock, I heard one last inhuman screech from the depths of the forest, the echo of which was soon drowned out by the rattle of rain. The way home is blurry, but I was there before sundown, and I finally felt no more desire to enter that forest again. That desire became a certainty when I looked at the photos I took that afternoon. Among them was a single, blurry, corrupted image of the lake, in the moment the object casting the shadow came down onto the water. I don't know if it's a tint from something below the water, or the mirror image of something above. I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't allow myself to. After all, I had no idea what I might see in my dreams, now that I had refused to heed the call. 30th of September. The nightmare wouldn't end. On the morning of the 30th, I had decided to at least reassure the other dreamers that I was fine. I sent them a single, "I'm back. There was nothing to be found. The investigation is over," and then stopped responding. I then spent my day as I would have before all this. Normal. I kept in touch with my actual friends. No great rushing wind, no shrieks coming from the woods, and only a little rainfall in comparison to the storms of the days previous. Until I went back to sleep. Late at night, I was ready to finally find the rest I had been denied. I was ready to enter the subconscious without any terrible visions, but that couldn't be. I dreamt again that night, but it wasn't a calling to go somewhere. It was a threat. I opened my eyes on the other side, and the weather was storming stronger than the highest of seas. The familiar and now feared rain effortlessly broke through the canopy and turned the ground into quicksand. I soon noticed the first difference. I was at the end of the path. It closed before me and stretched on behind me all the way to the horizon. I felt real. I could feel my cell phone in my pocket. Everything seemed even more vivid than before. I quickly looked to my left, seeing the building, but it didn't seem inviting anymore, just foreboding. It did not want me anymore. It only wanted to show me that I could never rid myself of it. The rest gets blurry again. I remember distant, heavy steps on stone, breathtaking fear, and a rattling at the building's door. But before something could emerge, I was blinded by something in the distance. I cautiously opened my eyes, and the sky was ablaze with a deep red light. This was followed by a scream. Mine or not, I couldn't tell. The sensation of my phone in my hand, and an escape before I awoke, knowing what I had to do. 1st of October. The next morning was uneventful, and should have been the end of the nightmare. After all, I knew what I had to do. It was in the forest, and now it was awake and hungry. It had wanted to invite me, but I refused it. But I was not the only one to be called, and someone else could take my place. It would lend me no rest, and would always be with me, unless it could satisfy its hunger. I didn't know if it would be enough, but I had to do it. I shed no tears when I told the other dreamers, those who also heard the call, exactly where to find the building from our dreams, and promised them that They would find all answers they were looking for there. After that, I soon moved to distance myself as much as possible from that very building. I didn't regret what I did. I lied to them, but it was what had to be done. So the cruel dreams could finally come to an end. So the scent of rain and wet earth could finally stand for renewal again, instead of instilling fear. And so I could finally forget the one photograph, which I had found on my cell phone on the morning after that fateful dream.
Note: following the publication of this document, 4 people disappeared in a residential area surrounded by forest. These events are considered connected. These people were supposedly searching the forest for an unknown reason. A single handwritten note was found in an envelope near a scrap of clothing, presumably belonging to a missing person. It contained the following text.
To the dreamers, you know my name. I finally found the answers. I need you here immediately. As you know, we've all seen it before, but we were wrong. We've all been there. They weren't just vivid. They weren't dreams. Come quickly to the forest. I will be waiting. Follow the main path for 3 miles. Then follow the path by the stone. It doesn't branch off. Follow it until you're here. All of you. We will be waiting for you.
Note: following this event, many residents of the area have been reporting sleeping disorders, specifically very vivid dreams, which have been described similarly by independent sources. The reason for this is unknown.